Thanks to a heck of a lot of leaks, the Nexus 5 may have been one of the worst kept secrets, but we're still excited that it's finally here. Frankly, there's a lot of reasons to like the Nexus 5, especially given its overall price. These days, $350 typically won't get you anything more than your run-of-the-mill mid-range smartphone. But that's exactly how much Google is asking for the 16 gig version, with the 32 gig going for $400. When you compare the 5 with some of the top devices currently on the market, there aren't that many drastic differences. If you recall, we were already largely impressed with the Nexus 4 when it came out last year. But there were a few things that we did not love about it. For example, it didn't offer LTE, it had horrible battery life, the low-end model only came with 8 gigs of storage, and both sides were made of glass. But for a baseline price of $300, it quickly became a huge popular device. Fortunately, the Nexus 5 resolved the concerns that we had with the 4, and even boosted a bunch of other specs in the process. First off, the new Nexus has Gorilla Glass 3 on the front, and uses polycarbonate on the back. It doesn't feel fragile whatsoever, but Google also didn't take any risks when it comes to design. It's classy, but if you don't count the Nexus logo etched into the back of the phone, it's also rather boring. There's not much that makes this Nexus stand out of the crowd. The sides seem a bit boxy, the back bubbles up ever so slightly, but fortunately, both the black and white units at least have a soft touch matte finish on the back. It offers an average amount of comfort, and we've never felt like we were going to drop it. The same could not always be said with the Nexus 4. So, how does this Nexus compare with some of the other Android powerhouse phones that you can currently buy? Well, it has a Snapdragon 800 processor, which is the top of the line smartphone chip right now, and it comes with 2 gigs of RAM. When it comes to display, there's a 5-inch 1080p screen which is incredibly sharp and offers great viewing angles, decent outdoor visibility, and mostly accurate colors. You also get wireless charging, a wide variety of LTE options, a 2300 mAh battery, and 8 megapixel rear-facing camera, among other things. Even though most of the features and specs on the Nexus are to die for, this doesn't mean it's a perfect device. The camera on the 5 is at least a huge improvement over what we saw on the 4, thanks at least in part to its optical image stabilization feature and HDR+. The shutter lag leaves something to be desired, but we were pleasantly surprised by how well it did in lower light situations. And it offers a reasonable amount of detail, even if it's not going to top some of the other Android giants like Sony's Xperia Z1. Most people plunking down $350 for a new phone off contract will be perfectly happy with the Nexus camera. The Nexus 5 has a 2.3 GHz quad-core Snapdragon 800 processor, and this is one of the very best that you can get right now, and it shows. Switching between tasks and multitasking in general was impressively quick. We only saw the occasional frame skip when we played intense games such as Asphalt 8 and Riptide 2. There's a 2300 mAh battery inside the Nexus 5, which seems small compared to some of the giants, but in reality it's not that far from average. The overall life we got out of it was still better than the Nexus 4, but there's nothing amazing about it. Our rundown test in which we run an HD movie on an endless loop lasted nearly 7.5 hours before the phone died. On a day of normal usage, it managed to go for almost 12 hours. We certainly would love to see it last longer than this, especially when it comes to heavy use, but it could be worse. Last but not least, the Nexus, as expected, came preloaded with a new version of Android, this time known as KitKat, or Android 4.4. It's the same overall Android we've grown to love for the most part, but there are enough key differences here that make it a much more significant update than we originally expected. We'll save the changelog for our in-depth review on Engadget.com, but we want to point out a few of our favorite features. First, you'll notice a few changes to the user interface. The icons are a little larger. You can now choose the number of home screen panels you can have, and there's even a Google Now panel to the left of your main home screen. You're also going to notice that the status bar up top and the virtual navigation keys on the bottom are translucent in these pages, which makes your screen look a little bit larger. The idea is that you can go into apps and games and have more real estate to take advantage of with fewer icons and symbols distracting you. Now, this is a feature that we weren't able to experiment too much with because ultimately it's going to be up to developers to take advantage of these features. At this very moment, we only saw the home screen panel and the Google Now home screen panel take advantage of the translucent display. The Nexus 5 also has a touchless control option, similar to the one that we've seen in the Moto X. Now this lets you say, "OK Google," and then perform voice-activated commands, like making calls, sending texts, and looking up directions. It'd be so much better if we could use it when we're in apps and when the phone screen is turned off though. At this very moment, it doesn't offer that capability. In Android 4.4, there are plenty of other great features. For example, it comes with wireless printing support, infrared support, a built-in step counter, and improved touchscreen performance. A few Android apps received much needed makeovers, such as the phone app, Hangouts, the regular email client, and even downloads. Finally, KitKat has optimized its memory performance in order to help lower-end devices work more efficiently. The Nexus 5 is sold directly on the Google Play Store, and it comes in two different versions. First, you have the North American edition, which has LTE support for, you got it, the North American carriers. Interestingly enough, Verizon is not one of those carriers, but you can get it on AT&T, Sprint, and T-Mobile, as well as plenty of Canadian carriers. Now the other bummer is the fact that you cannot take the North American edition and get LTE in other parts of the world. So if you want to have LTE in Europe and Asia and some other parts of the globe, you're going to need to get the other version, the rest of the world version as we are calling it. And conversely, if you get that particular version, you won't be able to have LTE support in the US or Canada. So ultimately it comes down to what you use the most. And if you're traveling to other countries rather frequently, this is going to be a huge factor for you to consider. The Nexus 5 is one of the best Android phones of the year, and it's an amazing value for less than $400. And perhaps even more importantly, it sends a message to many of the top phone makers in the world, who are charging more than $600 for products with the same types of features. We absolutely recommend getting the Nexus 5, although admittedly, it's going to be pretty hard to find one for a while. With the Nexus 5 and KitKat, there's so much to talk about that we simply can't cover it all in this video. Fortunately, this video accompanies our in-depth review on the site, which you can find at Engadget.com.